'Twas the nightmare before Thanksgiving, and Jack was once again bored, so he decided to go through another holiday door. Hi everybody, welcome back to Bentley House. I'm Aira, and today I'm doing a really fun miniature scene based on my idea of what would happen if Jack Skellington, the king, the pumpkin king of Halloween Town, went through the Thanksgiving door the very next year. I'm so excited to be doing a Tim Burton style miniature. I've been wanting to do that for so long, and this was a great opportunity. This is actually a collaboration between me and 4 other miniature channels. KrakenMakeRuckus, who makes incredibly detailed half-scale miniatures. She made an alien Thanksgiving based off of Ridley Scott's films. Real Life Dollhouse Miniatures, who creates a wide range of items from household and dollar store finds. She made a really cool Under the Sea themed dining set. The Square to Spare, who makes everything from completely furnished dollhouses to accurate miniature instruments. She made this beautiful dining room set, perfect for any miniature Thanksgiving scene. And finally, FatalPotato, who makes incredibly detailed miniature food from polymer clay. She made this Thanksgiving centerpiece based off the film Annihilation. All the links to their channels are in the description box below. Be sure to check them out. The idea for this collaboration was to do a fictional Thanksgiving. So as you can tell, I chose Nightmare Before Christmas, and in this version it's going to be Nightmare Before Thanksgiving. I guess you could call this a fan fiction, but just in 3D. If you don't know anything about Nightmare Before Christmas, the basis of it is that Jack, the Pumpkin King, in the forest he finds several holiday doors. He goes through the Christmas door and ends up kidnapping Santa Claus, taking over Christmas. Spoiler alert, he does return Santa Claus back to his rightful throne as the king of Christmas Town. But my idea is that this scene would be happening the following year. For this one, he's going through the Thanksgiving door. Everything you're going to see today was handmade by me, except for these little figurines. I got Jack and Sally figurines just to help myself because it was going to be a lot of pressure to try and make them look accurate. So you will notice that my miniatures are a little larger than normal to fit the scale of these dolls. I do really hope you enjoy my version of the Nightmare Before Thanksgiving. Let's get started. So I figured this would go similarly to the way it did in the movie. Jack would go through the door, see all the Thanksgiving things on the other side of the door, come back to Halloween Town and try to recreate it, except everything would be done in a Halloween way. So if your Thanksgiving is anything like mine, the first thing Jack would need to create is a living room. Something with carpeting, a stripy nice wallpaper, some wall hangings for the wall, and some drapes over windows to let in the light. Something very comfy and cozy. Of course, this would be done in a way that would feel actually more at home in Halloween Town. These pictures, I don't show you how I make them. They're just printouts put onto foam board and mat board. To make the walls, I use foam board, and then I kind of cut a weird looking window. It was very fun to try and figure out how Tim Burton does these things. I did a lot of looking at movie scenes, not just Nightmare Before Christmas, but I looked at several of his movies to kind of get the feel for the way he does his set design. After I had cut out a window shape that I liked, I glued on the stripe wallpaper, made sure that it was glued down, and then turned it over and cut out the shape of the window with an X-Acto knife. I find this to be the easiest way to get an exact cut on my windows. I ended up with 2 windows and 1 door cut out in the walls, and I glued them together to the base shape. Now I'm going to add in some carpeting. This is actually some upholstery fabric that I had left over from another project, and so I made a template by using paper and then cut it out from the fabric to glue down as the flooring. To create the window frame, I decided to use some liquid leading. You can buy this at a craft store wherever they have glass craft projects, and it's just some liquid black leading, and it has kind of a 3D aspect to it, and I used this because of the strange shape of the window, and I also did this around the door frame. To create the door, I made a piece of foam board and I put it on the outside, traced around it so I had the shape of the door, and then I added some foam board on top to make some detailed cutouts. Well, they're actually add-ons, they're not cutouts, to make a 3D effect on the door. And now I am just taking my X-Acto knife to add in some cracks and some details into the door. I'm going to paint the entire thing brown, and then as I'm going through, add a little bit of black to give it a wood grain texture. And now you can see how, since it's a little bit bigger, it's just going to be glued straight onto the back to where the parts that are painted brown are showing through as the door. It will not actually open. As you will see throughout this video, I start aging things by dry brushing black paint, and that's going to be on every single piece. I take some black paint, get most of it off my brush, and rub it against the pieces to make them look older. Now I'm going to make the drapes. This was some dollar store fabric. It was actually called Spooky fabric. I got it during their Halloween sale, and it was $1 for an entire sheet of this stuff. And so I'm just cutting off pieces. It's going to kind of have a spider web type effect. And then I have 2 dowel rods that I painted black to be the curtain rods, and I'm just going to glue those on with tacky glue and then put it over the window and glue those down so I have some very Halloween-y drapes. Now, of course, Jack would be telling everyone in Halloween Town that we needed a chair, and they would say, an electric chair? And then he would say, no, a comfy chair. We need a couch, someplace we can sit. It has to be comfortable because you may possibly need to take a nap on it later. This chair was really fun to create. It was fun to design. I found in my research that a lot of Tim Burton designed items are larger at the top and get skinnier as you go towards the ground. So I tried to incorporate that in many of my designs. The base of this is actually foam board. I put it together and measured it against my drawings, and this made a very sturdy base for me to add paper clay on top of. The paper clay gave me a very smooth texture. I used the water in the bowl you see up top to smooth down any rough edges or cracks, and this gave me a clay type look. Because I am going after a film that is claymation, I needed things to look like they would be something you would find in a claymation film, and so I could not get away with just using fabric or just using foam board. As I went along, I added in a lot of details. Right now I'm adding in a couple buttonholes, and on the sides I made some snakes of clay to make a few curls. Of course, there's not a Tim Burton film around without some curly shapes and stripes. So yeah, that was really fun trying to get those details in there. Now I did make fabric cushions, and the reason for this is I did want it to look a bit squishy because I was going to have characters sitting on the couch, and I didn't want it to be completely hard. I wanted them to squish into the couch a little bit. So this is foam board with 2 sheets of quilt batting on top of it, and it doesn't matter what color fabric I decided to put over them because I'm going to paint it later. This is another strip of fabric, and I'm going to use it to make ruffles that go around the bottom. I could have tried to make this with clay, but I figured it would come out a lot cleaner and crisper by using actual fabric and then trying to make it look like it was part of the clay couch later on. After that was done, I took just a 1/2 inch piece of trim and put that around the top of the fabric, and then I took gesso to paint over everything, to paint over the clay and the foam board and the fabric. This is going to give me a nice even coat for me to do my final layer of paint on top of. I decided on a top coat of purple because I really wanted to put some color into this living room. The idea behind that is that this is after Nightmare Before Christmas, so in theory Jack and Sally would be a couple, and if he was making this living room, he would have Sally's help. And of course, Sally's signature dress is made of fabrics with bright patterns and colors, so I wanted to make sure to incorporate that. Now I need to do the signature Tim Burton stripes. He puts stripes on so many things and they're just so exciting to look at and to paint. I made these stripes using a light lilac color. I wanted it to remain purple but also to stand out. And I didn't want to make them too straight. Another fun part of Tim Burton's style is nothing seems to be completely straight up and down. And again, I made it look a little bit older with dry brushing some black paint. Now, of course, Jack would be saying, we need a television set. Of course, you have to watch the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade on television, so he would be looking into finding a television. The movie was created in the 90s. This is probably more of an 80s inspired television, but if he's looking for one and desperate, he'd go for whatever he could find. This TV was built very similarly to the couch. I made a foam board base in the shape that I wanted, again where it is wide at the top and skinny at the bottom in the Tim Burton style. And I also made a table for it to sit on, mainly because I want to put lights inside the television and I want to make them removable, so I made sure to have two pieces. I also covered this with paper clay to give more of the claymation effect, and I really like how it turned out, especially kind of putting vents in the back of the tube TV. Some of you youngins out there may not know this, but TVs used to need antennas on top to reach a signal. So I had to make sure and put two little holes, so once I have it painted, I can add my metal antennas coming out of the top of the TV. Now I'm going to paint the entire thing brown. My idea is to do one of those old plasticky looking wood finishes, and it was really fun to try and paint this. I wanted to just print the pattern out and put it on there, but then I knew I would lose the clay look, and so I decided I needed to figure out how to paint it. Everything else, the dials, the top, and the back, were painted black. So I decided to take some lighter brown and just make some wood grain stripes down the side. This was very effective in making kind of that teak look. Once it was finished, I did feel like it looked a little bit too zebra stripe-ish, so I decided to take a fan brush, put it in some paint that was a little bit darker than the base and the stripes, and then slowly take the fan brush over the top of the paint, and it made some more streaky lines, and I feel like it really made it look like that faux wood finish. Now I'm adding the antennas. Of course, I wanted to make them very bent out of shape, very scraggly. This is actually probably what antennas look like in the 1980s, but it's also very Tim Burton-ish, I think. So now to light up the inside of the TV, I got one of these pumpkin necklaces from the dollar store. I just took the pumpkins off and kept the light piece, and then I rubber banded the lights together so they're all facing up. This may not be the most effective way to light up the TV, but I'm going to be on the lookout for another way to light it up. Also, for the TV screen, I wanted to make a Macy's Day Parade float out of Oogie Boogie. So I found a float picture, and then I found a separate picture of Oogie Boogie, who is kind of the bad guy in The Nightmare Before Christmas, but I do think he would make a fantastic float, and I decided to make the screen so that when it lights up, you can see what they are watching. It does look a little bit spooky once it's light up, but hey, that's towards the theme, so I was definitely okay with that. I made the background black and white and Oogie Boogie green so that he stood out just a little bit more. Once I was finished with that, I just printed it out in the correct size and then cut it out in the shape, and I also cut out a separate piece of vellum to give it more of a screen look rather than just a printed piece of paper look. Once it's all in there, you can see that it is lighting up and kind of looks like an old-timey TV, and it looks like there's a sunset going on in the background, although I think the Macy's Day Parade is in the morning. After that, of course, I'm going to need a lamp. Every living room needs a lamp, and of course this is going to be more of a Sally designed piece. That's why the shade is pink. This was also made in a similar fashion by using the foam board for the base. I cut out 2 circles, and then I made a hole on top where I was going to put in the dowel rod, added some hot glue, and then stuck the dowel rod in. I also made another piece of foam board that sits on top of the dowel rod that's going to hold the lamp. This lamp is not going to light up, but I wasn't really concerned about that. I just wanted one extra tall piece of furniture. I made a cone of paper, cut it to shape, and then also cut a few little nips into the bottom of the shade so that it looked a little bit rough. And then again, I'm adding some paper clay to the bottom, and I made a snake of clay look like it's going up the pole. I did end up painting the whole thing pink with stripes on the shade, but in the end I go back and make the pole and the base brown, and I like that much better. I think the whole pink lamp was a little overpowering. Now for Thanksgiving, Jack's gonna say we need a dining room table. Of course, we need something to hold all the food that comes with Thanksgiving Day. This table is interesting. I'll tell you a little bit about it while I'm making it, but I do like the way it turned out. I like its shape. I like that it's kind of doubled up. It's a little bit weird. I found this fabric that matches the pink of the shade, and I do feel like it's a fabric that Sally would probably have hanging around, so she made a table runner. And these are my 2 chairs for the table, again wide at the top and skinny at the bottom to match the same design as everything else. So far, I do think Jack would be pretty proud of himself on how this living room is coming along, although it is getting a little bit squished. So for the table, I made it also out of foam board, and the reason it is double-decker is because I made it too short, added some foam board on top, and made a second level to make it a little bit taller. Mostly because I really liked the legs and I didn't want to make the table over again. So out of laziness came this kind of cool design, so I'm just going with it. On the top, it is a flat piece, and I just, again, like I did the door, cut out some nicks and bumps on the table to give it some more texture, and then while I was painting with the brown, I added black in to give it a very wood textury look. So to go along with the table, of course, we need the chairs. The chairs are also made out of foam board and toothpicks. The toothpicks are just jabbed into the side of the foam board, and I glued it all together with hot glue and then used tacky glue along the edges of the foam board to seal the foam, because that would be difficult to paint just with foam, but it does paint rather well if you go over the edges with tacky glue. I painted it with the same exact steps with using brown and black at the same time while painting. So now that the furniture is done, we definitely need to focus on the food. Jack would be informing everyone you have to have a turkey, and he knows exactly where to get the perfect turkey. Of course, it is Tom the Turkey, king of Thanksgiving Town, and he knows exactly where to get him and exactly who to send to get him. In Nightmare Before Christmas, he sends Lock, Shock, and Barrel, his little minions, to go kidnap Santa Claus, and I feel like he would do the exact same thing to poor Tom the Turkey. Don't worry though, I'm sure he'll wise up by the end of this and send him back to Thanksgiving Town. So to make Tom, I decided to start with a aluminum foil center so I don't use as much clay. I knew I wanted him to be sitting inside of a canvas looking bag, and so I didn't have to put too much detail into the body. I just basically put details on any part of the body that I thought you would see sticking out of the bag. I knew his head was going to be long and skinny, sticking up like he's trying to see what's going on around him. I wanted to use some sculpture wire inside those parts so that it didn't easily break. So I took the wire, stabbed it in through the clay into the aluminum foil so I knew it would have a nice place to rest, and then I started sculpting some red clay over the wire to create the neck and head. Once I had that how I liked it, I created a beak from orange and then added that onto the head as well. And you can't forget the Burton style large eyes made of all white with little black pupils in the middle. I also put his little turkey gobbler and something tied around his beak. Probably Lock, Shock, and Barrel would want him to be quiet along their trip back to Halloween Town. For his legs, I wanted to make sure and add some metal inside of them as well. These are actually Christmas ornament decoration wires, and I put those inside of the feet and then sculpted the toes so that there was a little bit more strength there. For the bag, I took some old muslin and I glued the sides together, flipped it inside out, and in order to make it where he's sitting in the bag, I just cut an opening for his feet. And then I decided I wanted to make it look like a little bit more of a homemade bag. So I took a needle and thread and then I made some cross stitches up the side of the bag and then back down so it looks like someone made it by hand, and it just gives it that extra little detail that I love to add into miniatures. Once Tom was snugly in the bag, I decided to add some writing. I don't know if Jack wrote the word Tom and then crossed it out, or if Lock, Shock, and Barrel wrote the word Tom and then Jack crossed it out. You can kind of leave it up to your imagination, but I had the name Tom on there and then scratched it out to put the word dinner. I also added a little bit of black chalk pastel to age the bag a bit. So now, of course, we need some pies. I'm sure this would be Sally's part of the dinner. He's telling her you need to make some side dishes, so we have some octopus and olives. And of course, Thanksgiving dinner is not complete without the Thanksgiving pies. We have a cherry pie that has a little bit of a bite. We also have a fish pie, or which I recently learned is stargazy pie. That's an actual pie. And worm pie. These were all made in my recent live stream. I will put the link to the video in the iCard above if you want to check them out. They are made step by step in live time. So now, of course, the next step, Jack would say, is we need our trusted family friend, man's best friend, or skeleton's best friend, the ghost dog. His name is Zero. If you have not seen the movie, he is the cutest little ghost dog you have ever seen, so of course I needed to make Zero. And he is going to be where my dog loves to hang out, underneath the dining table waiting for scraps to fall. I used translucent clay for him, and I don't have a lot of experience with translucent clay, but I think it came out all right. I made a teardrop shape for his body and then scrunched up his tail. I saw some fan art while I was researching Nightmare Before Christmas, and it had this particular fan art I saw had Zero all curled up in Jack's arms, and I thought it was the cutest position. So this isn't exactly how he was, but I kind of based this on how my dog likes to lay. And so for his head, I made another teardrop shape. Zero has a very pointy nose, so I had to get that characteristic of his. And he also has a red collar, so instead of painting a red collar, I decided to go ahead and make it in clay in between his body and his head. Zero also has really long, delicate ears, so because of the fact I was sculpting him in a sleeping position, it gave me the opportunity to lay his top ear against his shoulder and put his bottom ear down like it's resting on the ground, and this helps me feel like it's less likely to break in the future by being able to do this. One other characteristic is Zero has a jack-o'-lantern that lights up as a nose. This one does not light up because it's so tiny, but I did make a tiny jack-o'-lantern for his nose, and I attached it using some liquid Sculpey to make sure that it will be glued on and not falling off. Because Zero is sleeping, I made sure to make very small snakes of black clay and make the little lines of his eyelids being closed. And he also has a very long line that goes down the side of his face to indicate his mouth line. And you see that in a lot of the artwork, he has very long mouth. So I tried to make sure and make that look as accurate as possible. And I gave him just a little bit of a line at the top to make him look like he was a happy little puppy. Of course, all dogs are happy on Thanksgiving because of all the scraps that fall down to the floor. I do wish he was slightly more translucent because he is a ghost, but I'm pretty happy with how he turned out. And of course, Jack is going to need his family for Thanksgiving, so he's going to make sure that Sally is there and a part of the celebration. As I said before, I did not make these figures. I purchased them from a company called Diamond Select Toys. They are supposed to be movable, but I will be honest with you, they are extremely difficult to move and pose, and they do fall apart rather easily. But they look very accurate, and so overall I'm happy with them as a purchase. And finally, we add Jack to the scene. Of course, he would be looking very proud of what he's created, the Thanksgiving that he has created in his hometown. And I could not pass up the opportunity to make a couple preschool crafts. You know, your first Thanksgiving, you always have to make the paper pioneer bonnet and the paper pilgrim hat. So I made sure to take that opportunity to make these for both Jack and Sally so that they could get into the Thanksgiving spirit. Here are a few final photos of all of the miniatures put together. The one thing I didn't tell you or show you how I made was the Thanksgiving tree with the door in it. It's really just some paper towel tubes put together, and then I took a piece of cardboard and ripped the cover off to show the wavy part, the inside of the cardboard, wrapped that around the tubes, and then painted the turkey on it to make the door. It was super easy and a super fun addition to this piece. And also, these Halloween gates you see in this final photo actually came with the action figures. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. As I said in the beginning, this is a collaboration with 4 other miniature channels. I cannot wait to see their videos. So that's what I'm going to be doing directly after this video is posted. I hope you guys have an amazing week. I hope you have a fantastic Thanksgiving. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see some more Tim Burton style miniatures. This was really fun and I super enjoyed it. Bye.